We're listening to, or we're watching a Mia Mulder video on what's the deal with the trans debate. But if anyone is interested in helping out the trans cause, which is significantly set back by the Trump win in the United States, please feel free to throw some money at Trans Lifeline, who are doing amazing work to not just in counselling and that sort of stuff. They do have a helpline for mental health crisis sort of stuff, but they also do a lot of other activities which are very based and very helpful to trans people who are struggling with all of the sorts of the bigotries and bullshit that they have to deal with in the States in particular. And I have my concerns about how majority Senate, majority Congress, plus executive branch and SCOTUS might work out for trans people, because I think it's quite possible that Trump will use Trump, and if not Trump, then Congress, heavily dependent on Heritage Foundation funding, might actually hold sanctuary states for trans people to ransom over budgetary matters, which could get really sucky for trans people. Yeah. Texas is bad enough. Florida's in many ways worse, and you start looking at Arkansas and Ohio and some of the other stuff that's going on. It's terrifying. I would not want to be in the United States right now. It's genuinely fucked. The funny thing is, I actually was considering emigrating to Texas back in the early 20 teens. Do I know Dahlia? Dahlia who? Don't think so. Are they a YouTuber, Twitter person, Blue Sky person, TikToker? Give me some context. Oh, cool. Nice. Is this who we're talking about? Oh, cool. Yeah. Look, Seattle, in many respects, is, but the minute you step outside of Seattle, Washington State can get pretty conservative. But if you can afford to live in downtown Seattle, um, uh, the downtown Seattle's based as fuck. Um, yeah, if once you get over the Cascades or the other side of Puget Sound, things start getting a bit more conservative as living gets a bit more rural. But yeah, and the whole Redmond. What's the other one? something. Burr. I'm having an ADHD moment. Bellevue. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, look, I think it's great that there is a Greens lavender caucus in the United States. I wish the Greens actually were a little more effective in the United States. Part of what they need to do as a priority for getting any other agenda is get rid of first past the post voting and get onto ranked choice. Without that, they'll never actually have any influence or power, which is a sad thing because they probably have some good things to say. But from what I've heard of the US Greens, there's also some sort of more eco-fashy types that are less lavender flavored, shall we say, in there as well. So anyway, back to Mia Mulder. She's a Swedish trans YouTuber who has been a member of Sweden's parliament, I think, for some time. Oh yeah, 100%. And look, if not ballot reform, then electoral reform around electoral reform around how districting works in the United States. It can't be done by states. It's got to be done by an independent, quasi-autonomous body that doesn't answer to the government. It just has its one mission, which is to manage the district boundaries. And get rid of the electoral college and get rid of all of the other shit. So this is a Mia video from about a year ago, but it sort of addresses kind of what Trans Awareness Week is about, which is why we're kind of watching it, which is what's the deal with the trans debate. So I'm going to hit play, but great to see you, son. Hope everything's good with you, mate. Thank you for stopping in again, as you have for the last couple of nights. Really do appreciate it. And let's settle back and listen to Mia.
Might not be completely anti-trans, but who are trans an orderly life in a society that will truth. They're trying to get there. And that is by a complete miscarriage of the usage of the word truth. A lot of anti-trans commentators will talk a lot about truth and objective reality and scientific things. And they will argue that truth is basically the closest thing we have to some sort of moral indicator. We have to live according to real truth. Because if we don't live in truth, we live in lies, which is bad.
I'm not going to go along with the general societal willingness to rewrite basic facets of human nature and human biology, and frankly, mammalian biology, in order to suggest that a delusion is true. Although that is obviously scientifically true. Trans women are not biological women. Biological women are biological women.
It's a very simple version of philosophical morality.
But where are you going with this?
They will argue that we need truth in order to live a true and correct and happy life, an orderly life, in a society that makes sense. Because how can you structure society if you believe things that aren't even true? And I kind of get where they're coming from on this issue. I have had my edgy atheist phase. I get exactly what it's like for people to do something that you think is completely illogical and makes no scientific sense. I get that, and it's a concept that appeals to a lot of people who might not be completely anti-trans, but who are transphobic curious. But it's a bastardization of what truth means, because truth only means what they say truth means. They have decided what, for example.
Yeah, I personally, I would say there are roughly 8 billion genders, because everyone on the planet, every human experiences gender in a different way, whether it be cultural, whether it be familial, whether it be environmental, whether it be societal, economic, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole bunch of different factors that feed into gender and how strongly you feel about it, and how you might, feel influenced by it, right? And yeah, but it's not just a matter of all the social influences. It's also about who you are, right? All those other things feed into your experience of gender, but they don't necessarily define it. And that's the problem, is that conservatives can't get their fucking heads around that. Identity is not a fixed malleable box that you can shove everyone into and say, you are now this. It's a broader thing. Anyway, don't get me started.
Example, gender is, and they have said that gender is biological sex. And then they say that sex is your chromosomes. Oh, actually, no, wait, I'm sorry. They don't say chromosomes anymore. They say gametes? Gametes.
The large gametes.
All of the history of gender and masculine and feminine interests and life experiences are because of the size of sperm. Also, like, not to be that edgy atheist person again, but isn't it weird that a lot of people who are like fervently anti-trans, who will argue about objective truth and reason, are all like fundamentally religious people? Like, hold on. What sex is God, Matt? Does God produce small gametes? I need to know if Jesus Christ had a penis. I know the hypocrisy doesn't really matter to them, but this is more for you and me, dear viewer. But let's actually take that, just from a philosophical point of view. I don't really believe in the concept of God, and I do actually think that we should live life according to what is mostly true. But I base that on actual arguments and not just truth equals good. But let's, for the sake of argument, for the sake of debate, flip that around and talk about the concept of truth for a little bit. Because I feel like when we talk about this discussion, in a very basic sense, we need to talk about why we even think things are bad in the first place. Why is transness bad according to anti-trans people? I have an answer, but it's probably not what they think is the answer. I think society is good when people are healthy and happy. And I think that society is bad when those things are not true. Seems like a pretty basic position to take. This philosophy shit is easy. But let's say, hypothetically, that we organized our society around the worship of a golden bull. Everyone worships the golden bull. We built churches to the golden bull. We worship near the golden bull. We meet there every morning. We eat meals inspired by the golden bull. And we generally just have a golden bull lifestyle. And let's say, hypothetically, that society is great, actually. The people who are involved in it are happier, they're healthier, they perform better in society than other people. And let's say that in the mythology of this religion, the golden bull chases away the dark orbs that haunt our minds at night.
Son, yeah, 100%. About a year or two ago, I started identifying more as non-binary than as strictly trans femme. Part of that's where I am with my medical transition and what's available to me for medical transition because of my economic circumstances. And I know that if I identify as purely 100% binary trans femme, then all of the things about me that aren't easily explained away as being specifically trans femme become a point of attack. But it's not just that. There are parts of me that actually do have some masculine components, such as Western society defines things as masculine. Like in Indian society, there's very different ideas about what masculinity is, or femininity, right? Feel free to ask. I mean, if it's going to be something that I object to, I'll say, look, yeah, and I'll demur. But always feel free to ask. You know me, I'm a pretty open book. Yeah, and that pain issue, that's part of it. I mean, it saves me some grief and hassle around explaining why I don't pass. But it's not the only reason. I think the other thing is that there are masculine aspects to who I am. I do like getting on the tools. I do like, I am quite capable of assembling a bedpost, or like a bed or a cabinet or something like that if I need to. I don't have any sort of but if I'm hang-ups around but if I do something that fits into the sort of masculine archetypes, that somehow I'll be less feminine, right? So it's not just the fact that it's easier to deal with not passing. A lot of it is also about, quite frankly, just being non-binary, like within the confines of Western societal definitions of masculinity and femininity. I do have aspects of both, right? And yeah, Western Victorian culture, etc., the helpless feminine. I mean, I'm sure there were other cultures where that was true, but yeah, definitely. I do know in Scandinavian cultures, women were pretty fierce warriors and respected as such, and you mess with Scandinavian women at your peril. Or at least, back in the... No, I am fundamentally non-binary, but it's because I was socialized so directly male, right? So those things are going to be part of me, even though they're sort of largely environmental. But how much of my understanding of femininity is also cultural? Because these ideas of femininity and masculinity are cultural issues. They're not biological. They really aren't. How can you justify the statement that women aren't good with power tools, right? You can't, because there are plenty of women who are good at power tools. Fair enough. But the idea that clothes have a gender, it's entirely constructed, right? So you deal with all of that sort of bullshit. And what is gender? Gender is a fuck. Gender is a weird neutral zone that neither Klingons nor Romulans can, or humans can enter. Federation civilizations can enter without the permission of all of the other parties, right? Yeah. And look, hypermasculinity, I've had my hypermasculine moments trying to deal with the fact that I did have a strong feminine bent. And I agree. Gender roles are bullshit. Gender identities are less bullshit. But, wanting to fit in with one group more so than another, I think is actually fine and valid. Especially when society is so heavily carved up on those boundaries. Exactly. Gender should be whatever the fuck makes you happy in the moment. 100% agree. But like identity. Forget gender. Gender's just a mess. Gender is a whole heap of archetypes, and archetypes are rarely true in total. They're fuzzy boxes with ill-defined boundaries that no one really understands properly, and I think that's, someone could, stereotypes. So someone can say, well, yes, Gemma, you're being very postmodernist about that, and I'll say, fuck yeah. Postmodernists are willing to actually look at all the crud around a thing and say, well, is that bit actually relevant? Is that bit actually useful? Is that bit actually only existing just to construct validity for the rest of this bullshit? Postmodernism says, let's pull away the the matchsticks until the whole structure falls, and then you see what's true. And the truth is, people are people, and we all have shared humanity, and that's what I really want to fucking get across about Trans Awareness Week. Is it doesn't matter what people's gender identity is. Everyone's got a different gender identity. Everyone's experience of gender is unique to that person based on all of their experiential stuff and all of their internal state, which may or may not be influenced by all of the other external inputs. But the fact is, until we have a way of codifying the human mind, which, good luck in the next 500 years, breaking it down to yeah, 100%. But like punk's the surrealism of postmodern, the surrealism of punk is also the surrealism of postmodernism. Postmodernism looks at the rest of the world, dismantles its structures, and says, well, if you've got all this without the supporting structure, it's just crazy, right? Like, if you had to explain how Western society approaches gender, or any society, any human society approaches gender, to a bunch of genderless aliens who had no idea how this construct worked, they would look at you like you're some sort of five-headed monster from some alien dimension, right? And the same about our political sphere, the same about our economic sphere, the same about the way we organise our societies. Like, there's one group, I reckon, that they'd look at and go, yeah, that's a fair point. And that would be my lot, which is not to say trans people, but, people on the anarchistic end of the political sphere. Because our stuff's all based on a justice and critique. It's all positively constructed. It's not defined about what it's not. Or rather, no, that's not quite true. Anarchism is defined about the behaviors that we won't tolerate and the outcomes that we can't accept. So it is negatively constructed, but it doesn't put arbitrary boundaries around anything that's outside of the negative space. Yeah, 100%. 100%, son. The only reason gender makes sense to anyone is because it's beaten into us since we were born.
Like, I love this religion that I've made.
But where are you going with this?
No, the bull isn't real, right? The bull doesn't actually do anything. There is no spiritual entity around the bull that is making you feel those things. Maybe you like the social interactions that you have from visiting the bull. Maybe you like the social structures that people have built around the golden bull. And maybe those things are making you feel happier. But that doesn't really matter, because in your mind, you...
Just a really quick one. Sorry for the pause, champ, but there's going to be some ads running in about 2.5 minutes. The reason for that is because, well, quite frankly, I am poor and ads help pay the bills. If you want to pay about $20 a month or whatever it is for Australian for 15, 16, I don't know exact numbers. If you want to pay that for Twitch Turbo, the people you watch who don't get to see ads because of Twitch Turbo, Twitch pays out a little bit to those people, I believe. If you're watching their channels, the longer you put your eyeballs on their content, the more money they get from Turbo. And for those people who are not subscribers and don't want to pay for Twitch Turbo, that's completely cool. You can either deal with the ads or you can subscribe, because that helps her too. Anyway, post-leftist, both anarchist and mutualist. Yeah. That's fair. And look, there's a lot of people who describe themselves as anarchists who don't really apply the concept of human liberty sufficiently broadly. Like I've met transphobic anarchists, Christian anarchists, and like the mental gymnastics that you have to do to fit anarchism into those prescriptive frameworks is kind of fun in a, oh my god, that's so wild sort of way, right? And I'm not, mocking these people, but I am suggesting that there is a sense of not truly understanding their just how ridiculous some of their positions are. Might be the best way to put it. Yeah. But, TERFs aren't anarchists. They can claim punk status, but they'll never be anarchists, and they'll never be punks, because punk is ultimately an anarchic worldview. Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, look, people come to their ideas the way they do, and sometimes that means they change, sometimes it means the ideas change, sometimes it means society changes. But it is what it is.